October 11th, 2022. It is 6:01 p.m. This is the Bluff Town Council regular meeting. Then roll call.
Linda Sosa,
Jim Sayers.
Luann Hook,
Brant Murray.
Ann Leppinon.
Erin Nelson serving as town manager.
And I can't tell. Yep, Chris is on. All right. So the first item on the agenda is the public comment, but I think what I'll do is first go to introducing Chris Wiltsey so that if he decides he doesn't want to sit through a public meeting, he can jump off. Molly Schmidt's also on, so that's good. Chris Wiltsey is with Bike Utah, and the Active Transportation Committee has been having some conversations with Chris about the active transportation plan and subsequent grants. And so I think I'd like to turn this over to Chris and let him introduce himself and take a few minutes for us to get to know him. So Chris, thank you.
Great. So you'd like me to just give my presentation at this point?
If you're ready, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. It's good to see all of you.
Good to see you.
Okay, let me just pull it up. Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to give you a quick overview of my program and kind of the ideas we have discussed, how we could run the plan, the different stages or phases of that plan. So I run the 1,000 Miles program, and what the 1,000 Miles program is the governor set a goal of adding 1,000 miles of family-friendly bicycle infrastructure, pathways, trails, soft surface trails, sort of the whole gamut. And so as part of that whole effort, they contracted with Bike Utah to make sure that was happening. So we're about 770 miles into that 1,000 miles. So we're pretty close. But also as part of our contract, we have to track those miles. And what we're finding is a lot of it is a lot of soft surface, so kind of mountain bike trails, and a lot of multi-use pathways. And so there's this whole kind of missing middle of infrastructure that isn't getting built that creates safe and comfortable infrastructure for people to get around and ride their bike in utility sort of ways. So our program is largely concerned with getting those miles built and getting them built in a quality way. So the basic criteria when we're talking about sort of transportation minded or even recreational facilities is that as speeds increase and the numbers of vehicles increases, so should the intensity of infrastructure. And what I mean by that is as the speeds and vehicles increase, the separations should increase between motor vehicles and bikes, and also the sort of comfort level should increase. So as an example, when you're talking about like a neighborhood street, 0 to 25 miles per hour, you're just talking about maybe creating small treatments to the roadway to reinforce that speed limit. And then as speeds increase, 26 to 44, you're talking more about maybe creating a physical barrier, some sort of separation between the bikes and the cars. And then when you get up to really like highway speeds, 45 miles per hour, you're talking about a multi-use path that might have like a very large separation with trees and things like that. So we might be looking at a range of these options when looking at Bluff, depending on the context and where we're putting these in. So in a lot of your highway sections, we're probably looking at a multi-use path that would make a great sort of recreation and utility minded facility. So as we approach the plan, there are different phases that we will go through. And I just want to walk you through some of those phases really quick, the main sort of phases. So initially, we're going to be doing our partner engagement and our public engagement. So that's basically identifying key stakeholders as far as partner engagement goes. So that's going to be people like UDOT, your association of government stakeholders, folks within your community council, different kinds of government entities that we can identify as we get into this phase. And then as far as public engagement, we want to cast a broad net and make sure that perhaps our public engagement won't be statistically representative, but we want it to be demographically representative. So we want to have all the different folks who live in your community represented. And then from there, we would start to sort of talk about what is our vision, goals, and objectives. And this is going to be somewhat iterative. We're going to have sort of a basic idea. I've talked about some of our goals as Bike Utah in offering these services. We have certain criteria we need to meet because of our contract with the governor's office. So that's going to be sort of the preliminary vision and goals. But as we talk with you and as we go through some of this early citizen engagement, community engagement, we'll refine some of those visions and goals. And then we're going to identify, what does your current situation kind of look like? Where are the accidents happening? Where are the trouble areas? Where are your strengths? Things like that. So we know where we're starting from. And then we'll start creating recommendations based off of all this information. Your citizen engagement, your current conditions, all these things are going to feed into those recommendations. And then we'll give you an implementation strategy. So what are the grants you need to go for? What should you prioritize? Which phases should each project happen in? And all those different questions we'll try to answer and give you a really clear roadmap of where we're going to start and where we're going to end at. And then lastly, we'll put in performance measures so we can know that we are sort of meeting the goals of that plan. And as I've told other folks, Bike Utah is in kind of for the long haul, so long as you want us. So we'll be supporting you in writing grants and things like that, even after the plan is completed. And then I wanted to just sort of show you a quick project timeline that I put together. It's just very broad, but these are the different sections that we just discussed or just went over. So a lot of the early parts, so talking about your goals and those different things and doing the engagement portion, that's going to happen in the springtime. Then the document creation, so that's going to be like all those recommendations, your implementation plan, and the review of that document will be happening throughout the summer. And then hopefully fall, we'll have a document ready for your review and for you to vote on. Let me know if you have any questions. Sorry if that was too quick.
Wasn't too quick. Thanks, Chris. That's really thorough. Council, do you have any questions?
Very good. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, amazing presentation, and so excited to try to get this thing off the ground. I know the Swansons are here, and they worked early with Chris for our last time, so I want to give them a shout out for helping. But really excited, Chris. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I just want to emphasize, like, our goal, especially like you just talked about the Swansons, like, and some of the rest of you, you've shown, I guess, shown Bike Utah that you're dedicated to these efforts. So we want to sort of reciprocate that to you and kind of continue to work with you and be a partner throughout this process.
Great.
Any questions from the council? Well, Chris, I know we're looking forward to working with everybody, and thanks for your.
I think Molly raised her hand.
Molly, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm not on the council, so I'm just, whenever I can I think it might be nice for everyone involved to understand like what, maybe you could describe a little bit what community engagement and public engagement will look like with the surveys and the workshops, just so everyone has a little bit more detail on that part.
Okay, great. So for the community engagement portion, I like to think of it as somewhat iterative. So we'll start with some what do you call them? Basically meeting like at a central location and having people come give their input and answer questions, talk with us, and we can answer their questions, things like that. And then from there, once we have a sort of basic idea of what the goals of the community is, we can create a survey that has some questions related to those goals. And once we get that back, we can do a focus group and sort of refine some of those ideas by talking in a more kind of close manner with members of your community that we choose as they represent your community. So the goal, I guess, is to continually sort of refine the information we're getting in and making sure that we're understanding what the community wants. Because oftentimes, like if you hired a consultant, they might do like 50% of what I just described. But for me, I'm really concerned about making sure we're really representing the goals of your community. Another thing we've talked about is sort of making an extra effort to get out to some of the tribal areas and maybe holding some open houses with those folks and making it as easy as possible for them to engage and be a part of this conversation.
So based on that, Council, do you have any other questions?
I don't, and I do really appreciate your work with us. We're all looking forward to it.
Great,
Should
thank
be
you.
good. Thanks, Chris. I think that if there's nothing further from the council, we'll move to the public comment. Well,
And
I
there,
think we've got approval of council minutes before that, so let's do
Sure.
that.
and there might, well, okay.
There might
You
be.
had I think that Tim and Irene Hamilton would like to comment.
You know, the problem with doing this is we're going against the policy we kind of set up as no longer are we taking public comment during the meeting. And so while if they could hold their comments and they could do it maybe in the public comment.
Oh, I thought that's what we were going to do.
We're going to approve the minutes and then we'll go to Tim.
Okay, great.
Let's hold off on approving the minutes. Let's go to Tim and Irene. They might have a public comment that is related to a question that none of us but Chris can answer. Tim and Irene, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, everybody. Glad to see your smiling faces. I just wanted to let you know that they're working on Mulberry Street right now as I'm speaking with the Chip and Seal project. And I wanted to thank you for going forward with that. I wanted to thank the council for that. So that's it for me. Okay, have a good week. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim and Irene. I just want to remind everyone, if you have a public comment, there's a 3-minute time limit for each person. And if you exceed it, we will mute you. Is there anyone else who has a public comment? All right, seeing no other public comment or question, we'll just go ahead and move to the approval of the council minutes from October 4th, 2022. And Chris, certainly you're free to stay on or jump off whenever you feel appropriate. So has everybody read the minutes from the 4th of October? Are there any comments, modifications, changes?
Hearing none, Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve these as presented.
Second,
Anything else? Any discussion? All right, then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Aye. So it's unanimous. Then moving to item 1 in unfinished business, discussion and vote on amendments to the town's outdoor lighting ordinance, number 2022-4B-1. So we had this on our work session today, and after the work session, I sent Dr. John Barentine 2 questions. One question was on the curfew, whether or not the international dark sky requirements needed the curfew in the ordinance. And the second one was lumens in Ag 1, Ag 2, and Ag 3, because we had them at 0, although there is the possibility of buildings and people living there. So about 4:10 today, Dr. Barentine answered. It's a pretty lengthy answer, and I haven't had time to read through it, but I believe you were all copied on it. Is there anyone who didn't, on the council, that didn't get a copy? So I think until we've had a chance to read this and have an informed discussion, the vote is probably premature so that we can answer those questions and then clean up the document for presentation to vote. Any thoughts on any further questions other than we didn't discuss the length of time for compliance, and that's in the draft as well. So we'll need to include a discussion of that before we vote.
Mayor, I looked at that briefly and it talked about answering those questions, but yeah, we could go ahead and just postpone it and review that and finalize it next time we have an opportunity. But he gave answers. He talked about a single house on the A, 5,000 lumens and some of that stuff. So we'll digest all that and then get it all wrapped up.
Well, the other piece to this is I talked with Chris McEnany today, and he was unable to get to his review. So now that we know what Dr. Barentine says, I will send those responses to Chris McEnany. So when he does the review, and he told me he would get it turned around to us so that we can go ahead and vote on it and wrap it all up next Tuesday.
Excellent. Thank you.
So any questions or thoughts on that? Otherwise, I'll just move this over to the 18th. And if you think of something further that you want Dr. Barentine to answer, or specifically for Chris, would you just send me an email so that I can do it so we can wrap this up?
And I appreciated his comments as quick as he got them back to us, because they were, they were very clear. And it was Amanda who caught that, we had 0 lumens in all those ag zones, and they need to have a little bit of outdoor lighting allowed. And he put in reasonable values.
Right.
I don't see any problem with it at all. So I appreciate having an expert advise us.
Right, and that's why it's a good idea to make sure that Chris has reviewed it and we've covered everything so that we're not doing multiple other amendments. Then there's nothing further on that. Number 2 was the discussion and vote on the process to vacate an alley or road. There was a question or 2 from Jim Sayers. Let me just get to that. We talked with Chris about this as well. So in the petition itself, the town of Bluff petitioned to vacate a street or alley right-of-way. Number 5, listing of affected property owners. Jim, if I understand your concern, it was that in part that each owner of record whose property is located within 300 feet of the public street, right-of-way, or easement be noticed. That is a legal requirement of the Utah Code. The Utah Code is 10 9A 609.5. So it sets forth a very protective standard for roads in Utah, which is much more stringent than apparently other states. So if you go to Utah Code 10-9A-, probably it starts at 100, but that lays out all the procedure, and the procedures that are laid out for both the petition and the procedures, the procedural instructions follow the code. The same is true for the question on utilities. Why do we contact utilities? That is also a part of the code, and the rationale is given that if you have utilities in the right of way that's about to be vacated, the utility company has to be notified that we're looking at vacating a right of way or an alley. And if there are no utilities in that alley or that right of way, it poses a problem down the road if we don't address making sure that our actions are appropriate, because if a utility were to have to go through that alley at a later date after we transferred the alley or right of way to a private person, that poses problems to the utility companies and also problems to the property owner, because it can result in the utility company doing eminent domain to take back that easement that they need for the utilities. So it's all pretty spelled out in the code, but if that doesn't answer the questions, then let me know right now. Otherwise, it feels to me like we've got all the documents done. Oh, one other thing, the $250 of the proposed fee that we have in there, I think I had explained how I came up with the dollar amount was looking at the cost of the town manager, the cost of the audiovisual technician to run the public hearing, the cost of posting the public hearing in the paper. I forgot to include the cost of mailing out the notices, printing the notices and mailing them out to various property owners, the clerk's time with getting everything entered. So $250 was really conservative, and our attorney said it's extremely conservative, that most are much higher than that and can go much higher. So Chris has asked me to ask our manager to track the actual time that the first one takes and the cost. And I know it's, an added step in the process, but I think that does give us a good idea after we look at a couple of these, whether our 250 is too low, but it's definitely not in the too high part. Questions, thoughts?
I was thinking about that earlier today, and I'm thinking that there will probably be legal expenses and that sort of thing also.
Correct.
Mayor, do you need a motion to move us forward? What are we looking for tonight?
We do need a motion if we want to accept these documents and get them posted for people to be able to use.
I'll make a motion to do that.
Okay, so can you say
Go ahead.
Can you say what the motion is, Brant, so we're real clear?
Yeah, I might get you to help me with that, Mayor, since it's a little more complicated than normal. Approve documents that we worked on for the process to vacate an alley or a road.
So would your motion include the procedures and the petition along with the checklist and letter to utilities?
Yes, ma'am, with that $250 fee.
Any second on this?
Oh, excuse me, I'll second.
Any discussion? I like it because it gives us a policy to follow, some forms to follow, and we do have people that have been very patient sitting out there waiting. So if this passes, give us a little bit of time to get things posted And then I'm going to assume we'll probably need to have some paper copies available in the office when the office is open. So please don't email us tomorrow morning. It's going to take a few days to get this done. Any further comments or points of discussion? All right, then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Anyone opposed?
I abstain. Conflict of interest.
No one opposed. 4 ayes. 1 abstention. The motion passes. Then I'll work with the manager to get everything kind of up and running and figuring out how we make paper copies available. Then number 3 is the update on the design review committee's work, grant possibilities, and the checking account update. Jim, do you want to start with? Wait,
Yeah,
hold on.
we
I
went over.
skipped over, right, update on pathways contract, sorry. Let's start with that.
Yeah, we went over the contract, the actual timeline of what was going to occur. It was pretty clear, and we made provisions that it will be clarified as we go along. You know, I don't know how much detail you want to give to this. I haven't actually downloaded the documents. We're using now a software that we're going to be, it was just introduced today, called Basecamp, in which all the documents having to do with strategic planning will be available, and it's a little more intuitive, I hear, than Google Docs. So all those materials, I believe, will be available to the town council, and so far, so good. Mayor, what else?
Well, I think that that's it. What we really did today was, as Jim said, we just laid out kind of the timeframes for different events, and we'll get those out in an email to everyone, but there'll be a couple of public meetings. There'll be some individual interviews, and this will try to get the first phase done by the end of December, and then the kind of second phase with the more intense part of the interviews after January 1st. They'll start working on surveys, and that's pretty much, I think, where they're going to start, right, Jim, is getting some public surveys out.
Yeah, we're going to get them some names, and yeah, they're using a format that is widely accepted, I think, in the strategic planning world. I don't recall the name of it offhand, focused something, but it seems to be a winner. And there's 3 basic phases, with the ultimate outcome being a document. But the teamwork starts kind of late in the process. But the whole thing should be tied up by August, I believe, of 23 is the end of the timeline. So they know what they're doing, it looks like to me.
It's interesting because at the Utah League of Cities and Towns conference last week, I went to a session on strategic planning for municipalities, and the format and the approach that was taken is almost identical to what Pathways is doing. So it seems to be, like Jim said, kind of the usual way of approaching strategic plannings for something like a municipality. I was really thrilled with that. And once Jim and I look at how we get into Basecamp, we'll let everybody know, and then you'll be able to go in and look at the documents yourself and figure it out. And they'll load everything into that, which is good. And then we will have a basic committee of 4 or 5 people to start working with them, and then it spreads out into the more public meetings, the single interviews, the community interviews, like with business owners and that type of thing. So I'm going to count on Jim to be able to figure out how to get into Basecamp.
Oh yeah, that won't be a problem. We'd tell you who the proposed team is, but we haven't told them yet.
Right, we've got to do some reaching out to people.
Yeah.
Any questions on Pathways? We have a follow-up meeting, I believe it's the 25th.
Yeah, something like that.
Erin, anything you want to add?
No, just to reiterate that, it'll be a very, they're looking to engage, stakeholders across the community. Our goal is a working document that will be actionable. And so, certainly we want input, across the board. So, we'll post of, when public meetings will take place.
Yeah, and I think to follow up with that is that once the team meets to look at the timeline, we can do a timeline that's on our website too, so it's easier for people than trying to figure out base camp. But it was a really good meeting, and I feel like we're really moving forward on that. Anything else or any questions?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, now we'll move to number 4 then, the update on design review committee work and grant possibilities, along with the checking account update. Jim, do you want to cover where you are with the committee?
It did not occur today. The UDB is having a day-long intensive session on water, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So neither of the real representatives, designated representatives from UDB, were there. Were present. We did have Damien and Grant and I were there, and we had a brief discussion. And Aaron was there, but nothing was really discussed very much, to tell you the truth, because it wasn't really a meeting. So I don't know what I'm going to do with minutes. I don't think there will be minutes for today. But there's nothing pressing that we know of. Nothing has been heard about the grants, and it sounds like the joint bank account is going forward as well as it can, and I think it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen eventually. So, but that's about it. You met with David this morning, though, right, Mayor?
I did. So do you want the update?
Yes.
Do I have a choice?
No. So I met, I had a request from Dave when I called him yesterday to say, where is the joint resolution? He said, well, I'll be in Bluff tomorrow. Do you want to meet? We agreed on 8 o'clock this morning. So when I got to Twin Rocks, he was there with Lee Kapolowski, and the three of us sat down, and lo and behold, Dave Conine had redrafted the resolution and called it a joint banking authorization. Overall, it wasn't much more than a rework of what Chris McEnany's resolution looked like that we passed. The bottom line is UDB is not going to pass that joint resolution. They believe that they talked about the resolution and voted on it and passed it in a prior meeting back in May, but they don't have the meeting notes to reflect that. So they redrafted, Dave did, the joint banking authorization, which was problematic because it took my name out as a signatory and put in Linda Sosa's name as a signatory, which for separation of duties, we can't have Linda writing the check and then signing the check. So I saw it last night at about 11 o'clock. So I took the legal authority and our process with me and explained that this was not acceptable, that if they want someone else, that's fine, but it can't be Linda or Brandt. So I had taken Dave's authorization and changed it because he didn't send it in a, in a PDF. I put my name back in, took it there, and they both agreed, right. They understand now that it has to be someone other than Linda and Brandt signing. They were meeting today as a board to go over water rights and acquisition issues with the Navajo Nation. But when I said, could you take this then with you and get Woody to sign it, Woody wouldn't be there today. Woody was not available. So they meaning UDB, apparently have a staff meeting every Monday at 11 o'clock a.m. And I was invited to join them at 11 o'clock a.m., which was qualified as it really starts about 11:30. But I can join them next week. They will send me a Zoom link. I then sent this off to Chris McEnany for review. And what Chris told me to do was not even to call a vote on it. We've already voted on the substance. We've approved it, and I can just sign the authorization so that if they sign the authorization, Linda and Heather Atteen have the ability to go to the bank if that's what the next step is. I talked to them about the information that I got at the Utah League of Cities and Towns regarding the playground. Bottom line is I have 2 solid, but probably 3 playground creators who are willing to come to Bluff or talk to the playground committee to show us what it would look like if we were to tear down and start over. They're not the repair people, but to get us started so we get a baseline of what we're looking at. They were all 3 very interested, and they'll do that. There's no charge. So I'll connect with the playground committee so they can do that. I asked UDB to please provide a representative to the playground committee, because there's no point in the playground committee coming to us and giving us information, then us going to Jim and Brant, and Jim and Brant taking it back to UDB. It just seems cleaner to have a representative from UDB there. They agreed to that. Then I told them that by a fluke, Linda and I sat with the USDA folks from Utah at the conference, and it looked very promising for some grant money from USDA, which Jim and I had been told a week before, but we were able to meet face to face the person who controls the purse strings on fire suppression. So all in all, if all of this falls into place with UDB, we made a little bit of progress today with that meeting with Dave and Lee. Now, I'm going to follow, unless somebody has an objection, I'm going to follow our attorney's advice. Just sign this and send it out to you, but it's essentially the same document as we did before, with an insertion by Dave that UDB is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, switching the titles around a little bit as to who goes first in the document, and then adding improvements as a reason to be able to access the money. So unless there's an objection and you want to see it first, I'll just sign it and get it ready for UDB.
Go for it.
Mayor,
Yes.
did get a few of those limbs trimmed this morning, so we've gotten that process started. Have kind of one more trimming session, and we'll have that stuff out of the playground.
Good, thank you. Thanks, Grant. And at your next DRC, then, if you would raise a couple of points, one would be the representative for the playground committee to contact. The other is there's been a request by Russ Wheeler, Comb Ridge, Eat and Drink, to know whether or not our entities are selling off any of that shelving that's in the library. And that's something that maybe you can run by the committee. Linda, did you have something? Go ahead.
So I've talked to Polaris about adding an extra checking account. We have 2. We have General Fund and Rhodes, and they said they would be able to do that. Then I called Zions Bank and explained what we would need, and was trying to find out who should go up and do this. I mean, hopefully it's just a couple of us that that do it, but you're not in the. So it was kind of over the head of the person I talked to. So she was going to talk to higher ups to see how it should be done. So she will get back to me, and then I'll talk to Dave, our accountant, and explain what will be happening.
Yeah, if anybody remembers that every time we make a signatory change, instead of just making that change, Zions wanted us all to come up and re-sign. So that's what Linda's talking about. Can two people go and fix whatever, or does the whole troop of us have to re-sign? Thanks, Linda, for doing that.
Maybe they could bring it down to us if we have to all re-sign.
We could certainly ask that, Brant. Anything else on that update on the design review? All right, then moving to number 5, the Planning and Zoning Commission. Aaron and Luann.
All right, Chair, they had a meeting on the 5th last week, and there were a few things. They did the site plan application, finished that, and then sent that on to us. Just for general, like as far as who has to apply for a site plan and that sort of thing, there's a really great flow chart under planning and zoning on our town website. There's a little flow chart. If you're doing this, go here. If you're doing that, go there. So that's really helpful if anybody's looking at planning. But these are it'll show the trigger that says you need a site plan. Most of the regular houses, most regular size houses just need a land use clearance, and they just go straight to planning and zoning. But they did that, sent it to us, and that's what we were considering earlier. There was a land use clearance from Andrea Martin on at the old Comb Ridge Eat and Drink, and there was nothing structural, and there was no footprint change. She'd been working off of an older model on what constituted a remodel. So they passed it on through, gave her the land use clearance, even though it wasn't required, but she had brought all the information. They're looking at a possible potential RV ordinance as a group. They would like to know, looking at the ordinance that exists, the number of RVs that can be on a lot, the number of days that somebody could live in an RV, that sort of thing. They're looking at their homework was to look up lists of these kinds of things and decide maybe what would be on that, and then pass it to the town council. And then after that, if it was something that we all wanted to pursue, then send it to the attorney for clearance. And that would, if that happened, then that would require a public hearing, of course. So then the dark sky, they discussed it a little bit just amongst themselves. And the lumen count, Amanda pointed out that we didn't have that lumen count in the ag area, so that was a good catch. Mm-hmm. And then they still have a vacancy. Malia has been proposed. Did we ever accept her? I'm not sure. But anyway, she has not started yet. And so they're working on a team of 4, and they will still, there's still a vacancy there starting after Melissa is gone. The next meeting is October 19th. Aaron, feel free to add anything that you heard that you want to add or whatever.
I think that's pretty thorough. I, wanted to highlight that RV ordinance. I think it's very important. They've recognized the importance of ensuring that, they compile their ideas without any fully formed ordinance before they approach you, to make sure that the town council fully understands, the different avenues in which the town could go before they really put a whole lot of work into the ordinance. And the reason this came up is there was a public question, a resident question, as to, some goings on, and they wanted clarity. And so that's how this came about, is through someone looking at our current ordinances and seeing some gaps, some potential gaps, excuse me.
One of the items in there said an ALTA survey or an AFLA survey. What does that term mean?
What are you looking at, Brant?
I don't have the list in front of me, but under the checklist there was a survey, ALTA or AFTA or something. We'll follow up on it later. I should have flagged it.
Are you looking at the site plan? Okay, hold that for a second then.
All right.
So any other questions on planning and zoning? Any other thoughts on that piece before we move to the site plan and the draft bylaws? All right, so number 6 is a review of the planning and zoning's draft application for site plan review and draft bylaws. And actually, I'm going to stop myself and back up a second. We have not approved Malia Collins yet. And that's on me because I needed to do a little bit more of figuring out where we are with the second vacant seat, whether we can just leave it open until filled or whether we need to repost. And so I need to do a little bit of work on that, but Malia Collins has been put forward. She can't take office until the seat is actually vacant. And right now, the seat that's being held is on maternity leave. So it's not an empty seat, it's on a leave. So I've been trying to work through that. And if I had more time in the day, I'd be a little better organized for tonight on that. But I'll have it on the agenda for next week. And Malia Collins will be the name that we put forward. And hopefully we can keep reaching out to people. There is a second seat. It's just a matter of how much advertising do we need to do. I'm not sure we need to run up the cost by going back to the San Juan record since you have to live in Bluff to be on it. Then to talk about the draft application for site plan review, because I was on the phone with Chris and I try to do as many things as I can when I've got his attention, I asked him if planning and zoning had sent their draft application and they had not. So I sent it to him to look at and then suggested that either he reach out to me at meeting us or he go directly to planning and zoning to talk about any thing that he would like to see adjusted. The fees were pretty high, but when I got done talking to him about the fees for vacating an alley or right of way, I'm not sure they're as high as I felt when I first looked at them, when you consider the amount of work that might have to go into something. So he's looking at that and he'll get back with everyone. And then we have the draft bylaws that Aaron put together for us. And Aaron, do you want to touch on that?
If I can get back to the meeting. Yeah, so the bylaws, so to confirm, these bylaws are for the Active Transportation Committee. That's what you'd like me to speak to right now, right?
Right.
Okay, so for that, based on the work session this morning, there are going to be a few edits, including reiterating that this is an advisory committee, which is not making any long-term decisions, adding a little bit more verbiage as to, their minute requirements and things like that. We want to ensure that the community is aware of what committees like this are doing, and therefore I will put in specifications as to, what information is shared, the meetings, residents can attend these meetings, but they're not going to be posted on the Utah Public Notice website. They will be posted on our website for transparency. So that'll all be detailed out. And then I will put a little bit more information as to, that advisory role to ensure that communications are still coming through the town, as this is a town committee. So I'll just make sure it's pretty laid out as to our expectations for them. Then this document will go to the committee to review and to edit, and if they want to add anything or modify anything, and then it will come back to town council for a final vote. And this is important because this kind of sets the standard for if other committees are generated in the future that would fill kind of this same advisory role.
Any questions on that or any thoughts? So Jim, at the beginning, before we went into the meeting, you had a request about being excused?
Yes, it's 7 o'clock, and it would require just a couple of adjustments. One is the executive session is now owned, I believe, by Aaron. If you look on your mail, Aaron, you may have gotten a message to that effect. So you'll be able to let the other council members in. And I also placed it now on the town council calendar. So it's not open to the public, but it's on the town council calendar. So people should be able to see it on the town council calendar and open it from there. Or just open it from the email that I sent you this afternoon.
So
Or whenever I sent it.
since we're discussing number 13, the executive session to discuss possible or pending litigation, I'd like to make a suggestion that, having talked with our attorney, that we defer this to next week.
Perfect.
To give everybody an opportunity to think through what was provided to us and make sure we're all available. And then our attorney will jump in after we've gone in and had an opportunity to discuss among ourselves. Then he'll jump into that. Does that work for everybody?
Very much works for me. Yeah, this makes it a lot easier because I was going to have to do some adjustments and stuff, but and also you were going to have to record it. But at 7 o'clock, yes, I'm going to be excused then.
Are you?
Without further ado,
You're-
will I? Will I be?
You will be.
I'll
So
excuse
when
myself.
you
Yeah.
jump off, you'll be excused. Yes.
Thank you.
Jennifer, go
Mayor,
Grant.
I said, how was the conference?
It was excellent. Excellent.
They're amazing, aren't they? Yeah.
They are. Aaron?
I was going to go back to Brant's question about what ALTA stands for. So it's a acronym for American Land Title Association Survey. So lots of different types of surveys out there. This just happens to be a very specific one with specific requirements. And you can find all that documentation there. But American Land Title Association. And that's pretty standard, it looks like, in the industry.
Thank you, Aaron.
Then if there's nothing further on that, we'll move to number 7, the wayfinding meeting on October 10th, 2022. Aaron, I haven't touched base with you. Were you able to go to that? You had a lot of meetings, right?
I did not attend that meeting, no.
So I did not either. So I will follow up with Elaine Gisler to see where they are with that. But the big question that they were talking about at that was that UDOT was not supportive of the wayfinding signs. And so I will follow up with Elaine Gisler at Economic Development. That was a day that both Aaron, Linda and I all had just too many meetings to make that one. Then moving to number 8, the San Juan County Commission's meeting on October 4th. Were you able to make that one?
I did. I attended in person. I think there are 2 items that, while they don't necessarily directly impact Bluff, I think it would be of note. The first was there was a presentation by Marty Combe regarding a removal project to mitigate uranium exposure on 2 separate BLM sites up in Lisbon Valley. The 2 sites are Radon Mine and the Columbia Shaft. This is just important because, these efforts have been taking place. It's in juncture with the EPA. They come in and do mitigation efforts. It looks like there's actually quite a bit of mitigation that needs to be done at Radon Mine. And at the Columbia Shaft site, I guess people camp on top of the tailings. So if you're camping up there, please don't. So they'll be working on that. So that's in the northern part of the county. The second, the county has hired a contractor who will be putting together, I don't know if it's a separate website, but at least a web page on the San Juan County site for that will highlight trails and trail systems throughout the county. And I believe the purpose of this is to inform visitors, residents of the different trail systems in the area. The presentation did not highlight, the specific areas that they would focus on, but my understanding is it will be county-wide. And so, for trails here in town, maybe, we may mention that those would be of interest. But I also know that there are a lot of trails maybe, close to us that it would, I don't know if, the council or the town would want to, make a statement in favor or opposed to listing these on public sites. And that's what I have there.
Any questions for Aaron or comments? Thanks, Aaron, for going. Well, if there are no questions, we can move to number 9, the Rhodes Committee report.
Can I go back just a second? I thinking about these trails things. Is that something that maybe we should alert, like our BLM representative? What do we call him? The Bears Ears representative, to just let him know that that's kind of underway. There, he's kind of our representative, Britt Hornsby, and maybe he would have an idea of some input on that.
We can certainly let him know. My initial reaction is it's probably included in the Bears Ears management project as a part of it, but I can send Britt an email and ask him what he knows about it, and then maybe direct him to the San Juan County website for those minutes. That's probably the easiest way, since he's on dad leave right now, and I don't want to, bother him at home. Good suggestion. So moving to number 9, report by the Rhodes Committee. We had a meeting yesterday, which was Luann and myself in person and Michael Havocan on the phone, because Pave Right was doing work in town and wanted to know if we wanted work done, and we had a fair amount of work that we've outlined with San Juan County and then with the San Juan Transportation Board for a matching grant. And I think Aaron took the initial call or the initial contact with Pave Right.
Yeah, and I will say, for public record, the gentleman with Pave Right came into the office looking, for a town representative. And the way he initially expressed it was, we're working on a project here in town. We have a few extra materials, essentially looking for a way to utilize these materials here in town at a discounted rate. And that was the end of the conversation. I reached out to Anne, and then with Michael kind of being the person of expertise, that's kind of how that progressed. But the initial understanding was it was a very limited amount of material, and I know since then it's kind of changed directions.
So I'll note right now that it is 6:59, and I believe that Jim Sayers has left the meeting. So the end result is that during the meeting, Luann, Michael, and I went through the budget after getting all of the Class C road budget, and after looking at what we had approved for expenditures, I think all of the 3 of us agreed that what Pave Right had worked themselves up to was doing the entire project that we originally were thinking we'd probably contract with San Juan County, or if we could find someone less expensive with a private contractor. So instead of doing a limited, instead of having a limited amount of materials, apparently there was a lot of material, and Pave Right felt that they could meet all of the work that Michael Havocan had outlined with the county, with the San Juan Transportation Board. And we get a match from them, from the San Juan Transportation Board. And so roughly the amount of work, the total bill would be $75,000. There'd be a match from the San Juan Transportation Board. And after the 3 of us spent time, it was decided that the work would get done because they were in town. And this is where it gets murky. We have never had a down payment that we had to make for San Juan County or LeGrand Johnson. So we've contracted for the work on a contract that spelled out the work, spelled out the expectations. We didn't have that because this happened quickly from Friday to Monday. So they meaning Pave Right, Michael talked with them several times. At the end of our conversation, the three of ours, I pretty much went back to doing what I was doing. I expressed a lot of concern about the speed at which we were moving. And I said that this had to be, if we went ahead, it had to be the total amount, no add-ons, no equipment fees that weren't in that amount, because that was our max that we could spend on these projects. I'll let Luann state her own position, but I agree that the roads that we talked about, like behind the community center, as the Hamiltons commented on, they're important roads and they're dusty. And we had agreed to the work. What we had not discussed in the conversation between Michael Havocan, Luann, and myself was the expectation that Pave Right apparently had to have a $25,000 down payment today. And that's where we are stuck. They're doing the work. As Mr. Hamilton pointed out, they're doing the work right now. But what our procedure calls for is we get an invoice with the scope of work, we get a contract. Then after we've got that, Linda puts it on the list of financials to approve with everything else. And then we put it on for a meeting, usually the last meeting of the month, and we approve or not those payments. There's a difference in my mind, between agreeing to spend the money and pay the money. And so today, it was not a pleasant conversation that Michael and I had, because I held firmly until we had this meeting tonight, I would not ask Linda to write a check for $25,000 because it's a deviation entirely from our policy. And we didn't get a contract. We don't even have the information about Pave Right other than the word Pave Right at the top of a invoice. And then they added /contract, and it spells out a general scope of work. I don't think it's as detailed as a contract would be, but there is no way that Linda is authorized to write a $25,000 check without us being in a meeting and discussing it and voting, if that's what people wanted to do. So
How much get done today, Mayor?
how much what? How much work?
Get done today.
I have no idea, Brant. My first meeting was at 5 to 8, and I have not had a break. So I have not talked to the contractor. Michael thought I had talked to the contractor yesterday and that I'd received the invoice yesterday. I didn't see anything until about 12:30 when Linda dropped off the invoice today. So I was totally unaware of the $25,000 before they did the work.
My thought is you wouldn't pay that until the work's done. And if that didn't suit them, then we wouldn't do the work. That would be my initial take on that. A lot of pavers, we had them come to the beach in the summertime. In the spring, they'd show up and they say, I got some material left over. I can pave your parking lot for you today. So that's a fairly common sales tactic. But it seems to me if they do the work, then we're fine. I'm not concerned about that. I want those things done. So I'll stop right there.
And Lou, do you want to put in like where you're at with this?
Well, we did have these meetings with the contractor. They're a small company. They came into town to do Twin Rocks parking lot. They did a great job over there, and everybody seems to be happy with it. They know what they're doing, and they do have all the equipment in town. They've got the rollers, all of the oil, all the rest, and so they went right to work on our saying that, yes, we want them to do that. We agreed in our roads committee because we had already voted to do that work. We'd already voted on the map. We already knew what we wanted. And then these guys showed up ready to do it. So it just made it to where it was cheaper. The prices are all going up all the oil prices are going up, all the supplies with the diesel supply, everything is going higher. So this is an opportunity to get the project done that we had on our list. So he did want a deposit to start the work, which is how they run businesses. You get the deposit to pay your guys, you get the deposit to pay your materials, and that's sort of the confirmation from the whoever you're working for that you've got a commitment into it too. So I had no idea that after we had already approved doing this work that we would need another approval to do it. So that's what tonight is if we can approve the deposit, then we can go through the formal. And before we would give them the deposit, Michael will have a contract drawn up with them. We can sit in the office tomorrow and go through the contract and then have him sign it. And then we can give him the check tomorrow for the down payment. And then the rest would be paid at the completion of the project.
How long will the project take?
They said about 5 days. So I asked them to do the Mulberry Street first because of the upcoming arts festival. One, it's a lot of traffic up there and it dusts everybody. When there's that much more out of town people, they're dusting themselves and dusting the neighborhood. And then they will move their equipment out of that area so that it's open for the festivities. And then they will, it sounds like about 5 days they should be done.
I have two thoughts about that. Most of the time you pay people on Friday, so they're getting their money kind of so they can pay their people toward the end of the week, I think. And I wouldn't want to prepay anything. I would make sure, since we don't know these guys, that we'll pay them as they do each section, maybe a third, something like that. That's the way I feel about that.
Linda?
So I got a copy of what's the invoice from Michael. He gave it to me. I don't think we pay anything until we get a standard contract. And don't these people have an office in Farmington where they can write up a standard contract that says who they are, their address, the amount of time it will take? I mean, is what they gave us cover everything? It needs to say that it covers everything because they're next door getting water. Is that going to, at some point, will there be extras or add-ins? The way to avoid that is the contract. And it says it guarantees 5 years, but I believe it said the work, it didn't say the work and materials. If I had to take that piece of paper through an audit, I mean, I would do something like that, maybe for $5,000, but we're talking $75,000. We've got to have, for the audits and the state, it's got to be spelled out. And I'm assuming if they've done governmental things before, they should know how to do it. This is not exactly, to me, a sit in the office and modify something. It's just way too vague. It needs to be standard because we're a governmental entity.
Erin?
I'll say too, just echoing what Linda said in regards to audits. I am also very concerned with the handwritten invoice / contract that was received. Also, if they really needed a deposit to get going, they would have waited to start work. I know they did receive a verbal authorization. However, if that was actually, to start the work, they would have waited to receive that. And I don't think that should take any bearing on the decision made whether to pay a deposit or not at this point.
I have a couple of comments. I agree with Lou that materials are going up and diesel or whatever is going up, but they were here with their materials. They've already paid for their materials. That's why they're trying to get us to contract for the work. So I don't accept that as a valid reason. When I talked with Michael Havocan and I asked him about the water truck this evening, well, late this afternoon. I heard they're filling up the water. That's an extra. I think I was really clear in our meeting that this would be an all-inclusive amount, 75,000.
They have a hose connected to the outside of the community center. What is that?
I don't know. Yeah. So all I know is they were filling up the tank. So apparently there's a charge for water. I had asked about equipment because they were probably bringing in a bulldozer. I said, we're not paying extra for the bulldozer. It's 75,000. The other problem is that even if we voted to pay $25,000 down now, we don't have $75,000 to pay out. We have a matching grant. We have to submit that with proper documentation to San Juan Transportation Board. And I feel totally comfortable, having been grilled by the San Juan Transportation Board a year ago, that there is no way, I am very comfortable saying there is no way that they would accept this invoice as reimbursement for one half of the 25,000. And if they expect to finish in 5 days and be paid the remaining 50,000, that's not possible. So we have a total of $90,000 in the account right now. We have outstanding invoices to San Juan County times 2. We have a $5,000 invoice outstanding, meaning we have not been invoiced for any of these things. We have a $5,000 commitment to UDOT. So, you know, I'm sorry there's a misunderstanding, but I certainly think that being upfront and saying it's a $25,000 down payment before they started would have been a much preferred method than to start yesterday and then come up with this. So
Michael's idea was to get that contract to the standard that we need for auditing and stuff before we give them the down payment. So and the other thing that you said about the materials, that is not a justification for them doing it or for their price or anything else. It's just a reason why it was a good idea for us to do the project now, so that we could actually get it done with the funds that we have, because the price will be going higher and higher as the years go in. So that was the point of that, not as to why, yeah, they've bought it, but that's why we can benefit from that purchase. But anyway, if we could do that, approve it contingent upon having a contract that Aaron, I guess, would be the say, or if Linda's the one that says that it's a contract, or whichever one of you is in charge of approving the contract, we can work with him to get what we need from him, and he can make that contract, and then we can get him the deposit.
my suggestion would be is if they want the work is to continue to do the work and do it the same way that we've done other construction contracts on the road, is to, they invoice us when they're done. We collect our equal match from San Juan Transportation Board and they're paid. If they've done government contracts before, which I'm assuming they have, they must know you can't show up and demand this today, that we have processes we have to follow. I can't, and I'll just get it out there. I can't vote yes to pay them at this point. If we have a
Well,
contract,
that's where my misunderstanding and where we had already approved it, that was the whole point of that meeting of the Rhodes Committee, is that do we have the money? Do we have it in our budget? Can we pay them? And it was understood from me, and whether we talked about it in that meeting or whether it was Michael and I or what, that it's not a surprise to me. So what's a surprise to me is that we don't have it to be able to pay them for this initial startup. So like right now, what do we tell them? That they won't get paid, so then they have the option to leave and bill us for what they've done, but then they leave and hope that we pay that portion? Or where do we stand now if that's not an okay system? Because how long will it take? That'll be 6 months. We can't approve it next week. Like, what do we tell them? We need a nuts and bolts thing. And one other thing, the water situation, it's not a charge, an add-on charge. they got their water. It's not from the town system. So
Okay, that's-
anyway, but what do we tell them? What
And
do we tell them?
That's not what Michael said, because I asked him about the water, but be that as it is. The way I would suggest we do this is that we go over and talk to them tomorrow and explain that we have a process of how we pay bills that I did not know yesterday when we talked, that there was a down payment that was required. We have never paid a down payment, and I confirmed that with Michael. We've never had a down payment on road work. It's always been invoiced later. So they could tomorrow put together a contract for us to look at and approve next Tuesday. They can submit then their invoices when the work is done. We will go to San Juan Transportation Board that meets once a month, get our share of the money from them. In the meantime, we pay them our half of the match, so we'd be paying them approximately half. But I just can't see any other way to do it, and I'm happy. Well, not happy. I'm not going to be happy about this. I wasn't happy arguing with Michael or you, Luann. I don't like to do that. I will go with either you or both of you to talk to them and explain it. And I don't mind taking the heavy hit of saying there's just no way we're going to withstand an audit based on this piece of paper. There's no way that we have $75,000 to pay out. We have 90, but that is against the policy we voted on to hold 30,000 back. They've started the work. We're not going to not pay them. We've paid our bills. You know, and like I said, I'll take the hit for saying I was not of the understanding that we had to do a down payment, because I would have done this differently. So it's everybody's call. If somebody wants to make a motion, or if you just want to let this sit, and I'll go talk with them tomorrow.
Do we need a motion, Mayor? Because I agree with you. I think we should follow our procedures and policies as much as you emphasize it. And I just read an article the other day about a hurried payment on an invoice that cost the town $2 million. So we just can't do this hurried bill stuff. And so I'm going to make a motion that we do it exactly the way you said, that we'll follow our normal procedures. We want to make sure their invoice clears San Juan County Transportation. And if we aren't able to do it, we'll pay them for what they've done, and we'll just figure it out later. But I'm not willing to break our procedures to save money, because I think in the long run it'll bite you.
I second it.
Any more discussion? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
I
Brant, are you?
I said aye.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Anyone opposed?
All right.
And Jim has left the meeting. So the motion is carried to not do this in any other method than what we've done in the past. Lou, if you want, I will go and talk with them in the morning and
Okay.
explain it.
I'll set up a time that we can meet. What time is good for you?
I have a Rhodes meeting with Aaron and Michael to look at Copper Cliff 2 on the addressing issues. And I'm going to join them. I have a personal appointment from 9:30 to 10:30, and then I'm going to join them. So if you talk with them, if they would do it after, say, 11:30, if they want to do it earlier, let me know, and I will try to rearrange and do it before. I'm assuming they'd like to do it first thing in the morning.
I'm sure they will, because he won't, if he's going to pull out, he doesn't want to have to pay his people to keep working. But part of that motion, I guess, was so that if they do pull out, we pay them for whatever they did.
When we're properly invoiced with the contract, yes. So why don't you do this, Lou? If you can, I assume you have his contact information.
Mhm. Yeah, because Michael was out of town and Brant's no longer on the road committee. I should have called you, Brant, because you've got experience with this sort of thing. But we talked on the phone, the three of us, as best we could, to figure it out. And I talked with them, and seeing the result, I said I would hire them. I would get it done. If I had a project like that and they were right here and I just saw the work that they did, there's no reason not to pay them. That's the whole budget thing is what's irritating. It's like, if we don't have any authority as a road committee to say that, yes, we hired you, yes, let's do it, it's frustrating. So he's probably, I don't know what he'll say, but he's come to me because I'm the one in town and the one there. We've helped him with the water and so on. So I will let him know, but I'm sure he'd rather meet at, 7:30, 8 o'clock. He'd probably like to know tonight. I'll probably let him know tonight. And then he can decide what to do.
Yeah, can you text me and let me know? And if it's like at 7:30 or 8, don't know earlier than 7:30.
Okay.
I have an obligation prior to that. But I will, like I said, I'll take the hit for this one. I think we have to follow the procedure. The council's voted to follow it. They'll get paid for the work, but we've got to be able to withstand an audit, and we have to be able to withstand. And it's not about their work quality. I understand their work quality is very good. This isn't about that. All right, then move to number 10, the state growth conversation meeting from October 4th. Erin?
Yeah, so the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, SULOG, and Envision Utah, which was the facilitator for this meeting, invited a number of people from the county to participate in a listening session. I would akin this to, a strategic planning initiative to look at Utah's growth over the next few decades. The meeting started with some demographic info. San Juan County has actually been pretty stable in terms of their population of about 14,500 people since the year 2000. Bluff has decreased in population overall by 1 person over the last 2 decades. They talked about how a lot of the population changes here in San Juan County specifically are due to migration. So people moving, maybe after high school, people moving away and things like that. So they provided some demographic information and also some projections, including kind of a standard line, accelerated growth, lower growth. So they project in the next 10 to 20 years that San Juan County might grow between 4,000 and 8,000 people roughly. A lot of the conversation coming from the participants were about visitor impact and how visitor impact really, can impact the resources and natural resources in the county and how you want to strategically plan for that. This is a 3-phase project with the state. So right now they're in the listening portion where they're going to each county or each region to get information from the leadership. The second phase is going to be public engagement that comes in 2023. So we will provide updates to residents as to when that is happening. I believe there are going to be surveys and things like that. And then 3 is going to be talking about like the big strategic moves and action plans based on, the information they've gathered. The rest of the conversation was a participatory survey. We got fun little electronic ways to write in, and then we had group discussions about the opportunities, the challenges, and the solutions that we see in San Juan County in regard to growth specifically. The challenges that were identified were housing, jobs, and water. Those 3 ideas came up over and over and over again. So with all that being said, I'd say, keep your ears open in 2023 for additional participation events. I will say that Western and Northern Utah has seen immense growth over the last 20 years. And so, while certainly we want to be able to focus here in rural Utah, and that's why the governor's office came out. Utah as a whole is experiencing a lot of growth, and so this is a good time for the governor's office to be doing this. So I did want to highlight, I thought it was great that they wanted to come out to this area to ensure that our needs are also being met as they do this planning. Oh, Anne, you're muted if you're talking.
I was trying. It sounds like it was really useful meeting, and I wish I could have gone, but thank you for doing that. Anybody have any questions for Aaron about what went on?
Bob Springmeyer had some interesting numbers in his economic report today. I don't know if you got a chance to look at those, Aaron, but some of the numbers that you're talking about were also in his report, homelessness and some of the stuff. So it might be interesting to compare his idea with some of this information. I'm concerned that they're not accurate on their growth potential for San Juan County, but because it's a factor of water. That's my only comment, but thank you for going.
Yeah, and I would just say too, as they move into the second phase, as I think we're all very aware, there are differing opinions throughout the county. And so, I felt very honored to be able to represent, hopefully it's okay, represent Bluff and our interests. As we know, sometimes there's a differing of opinion in different parts of our region, if that's an okay way to say that.
Bob Springmeyer was most likely one of the consultants that they talked with, because he wrote an article that was quite lengthy about 3 weeks ago, challenging some of the assumptions on growth. But I think it's something we need to pay attention to, because Utah is growing quickly, and that kind of ties into whether there are any questions. Lou, Linda, anything for Aaron? That kind of segues into the Utah League of Cities and Towns. There's a lot of discussion about growth. There's a lot of discussion about the lack of quote, end quote, affordable housing. It was a really good conference, and I would encourage the entire council and planning and zoning next year to take an advanced look about how more of us could go. It was well worth it. There are a number of things that I'll raise, not tonight, but that I picked up on the conference that we need to discuss, because there are some changes we might want to make based on the experts that we heard from. Linda, what was your thinking on that conference?
It was really helpful. They had a lot of rural things. I went to different budget kind of meetings. I think overall, you really get the feeling that we are not some little town. The things that we're required to do are the same things that Salt Lake and Provo and everyone else is required to do. And, there's just really a good feeling of community.
I went to a couple every workshop I went to was excellent, but one was the First Amendment for non-lawyers, and I'll get more information out to everyone about that, because that was really helpful. On the issue of other, if there's nothing further on this, I just have a couple announcements. There is a drive-through flu shot clinic at the community center on October 18th from 11 to 1 p.m. So I think I might try to just have Linda do a blast on these things that are coming up, but it's the Bluff Community Center, October 18th. Well, it says Bluff Center. It's probably the senior center, from 11 to 1 p.m. I don't know what San Juan County was doing, to be honest, on the early voting. Suddenly, when I found out there was a state voting site and we weren't on it, I got one explanation from the election judge that they hadn't decided on the dates for voting for anybody in San Juan County. And then all of a sudden in the paper last Wednesday, we have early voting at the community center on October 12th, which is tomorrow, and November 2nd from 10 to 2 each day. I reached back out to the elections judge, and he said, well, yeah, those are the dates. They dropped 2 of the dates. Usually they do 4. They dropped 2 so they could do more chapter houses in person. That I had no issue with that. That's a good thing. And I didn't mind that we dropped down to 2. But finding out about it, so we couldn't even get it into last week's meeting, I find out then that how these dates were apparently decided is a resident in the community reached out to the elections office and set the dates. So I'm going to McDonald because it's fine that they pick the dates because they staff them. They are working under a lawsuit agreement. We would accept whatever, but we need to know what they're doing, and they need to have a contract for use that waives the fee. I haven't been able to get any answers, but that's the early voting. So tomorrow, if anybody wants to vote, 10 to 2 o'clock at the community center in the auditorium gym. And then there's the pre-disaster mitigation plan, October 18th at 1:30 at the community center. It would be really helpful for people to show up and talk about what they view as problems that we could be faced with and how they'd like to have them addressed. And we'll do another reminder, but the biggest one is really early voting tomorrow in person. The town council has no obligation other than to open and close and do a few little things, but I will be showing up with a contract for them to sign tomorrow. Anything else on other by anyone? Hearing nothing else at 7:31, are there any motions?
I'd motion to adjourn the meeting, Mayor.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Right.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous.